Another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah 13, verse 37. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Divine authorization of the Quran's mathematical code. We reveal these laws in Arabic, and if you ever acquiesce to their wishes, after this knowledge has come to you, you will have no ally nor a protector against God. And the footnote says the verse number 38 equals 19 times 2. Placing the values of Rashad 505 and Khalifa 725 next to 1337 through 38 gives 505, this long number, equals a multiple of 19. See Appendix 2. We have sent messengers before you, O Rashad, and we made them husbands with wives and children. No messenger can produce a miracle without God's authorization and in accordance with a specific predetermined time. SubhanAllah. So these verses are informing us that there is a divine authorization from God in order to reveal something like the mathematical miracle of the Quran from God. Obviously, we know that for hundreds of years, for over 1400 years, nobody could, decipher the meaning of the initials or anything about the Quran's mathematical code. And God allowed the Messenger of the Covenant to unveil this awesome mathematical code, and this was a proof, incontrovertible proof from God that he was a messenger from God as well, in addition to providing the foundation for the signature of God's creation and the miracle in the Quran, and the fact that God has preserved it for us. It also provided a proof for the messenger himself that he was a messenger from God that was authorized by God to show this extraordinary miracle, which is one of the great miracles, or even referred to as the ultimate miracle by the Messenger of the Covenant. So God says, after we have revealed these laws in Arabic and after the information that has been revealed to the messenger, if the messenger tries tries to cater to their wishes, to try to bend the message or compromise in some manner, then he's not going to get any protection from God. In other words, he's the same as any other person, and if he goes against God's system and tries to compromise in some manner, that he is going to be punished by God as well. And so the messenger, Rashad the messenger has to follow God as well. Rashad the human has to follow Rashad the messenger as well, and follow God's commandments, just like any other human being. And God says that all the messengers that he sent, including Rashad, all those messengers were husbands with wives and children. Obviously, that doesn't include women, so this, again, would like to highlight that, a lot of the females, quote-unquote messengers, fake messengers who are popping up, claiming to be messengers. This verse shows that all the messengers throughout history from the Quran have been males. Obviously, females are equal to males, but they can be saints, and they can be righteous and have the same rank in paradise, but they're not chosen as messengers to give the message for various reasons. Obviously God is the most wise, and he knows that it's a job that is more appropriate for a man, and God chooses messengers as men who are humans just like anybody else, who may have wives and children. Obviously all messengers did not have wives and children, like for example Jesus didn't, but they're all men, and if they obviously, if Jesus, for example, lived long enough, he would probably have wives and children as well, right? But the fact is that they're all humans, and God sends these humans as messengers, and just like anybody else, and they're just as human as anybody else, and they have no ability to do anything on their own. Everything that they do from God is, based on God's authorization. So the miracle that the messenger presents is based on God's authorization. For example, if God didn't want Moses to turn the staff into a serpent, there was nothing Moses could do to do it on his own, right? It had to be authorized by God in order for him to perform it. Same with Jesus. And so God says a messenger produces miracle in accordance with God's authorization and in accordance with a specific predetermined time. So whenever the time comes for a messenger to produce a miracle, that's when the miracle is allowed to be produced by the messengers. So verse 39 says, God erases whatever he wills and fixes. With him is the original master record. So we understand that with God as the original master record, and whatever he wills, he erases and fixes. And so we understand that, two false verses, for example, had been added into the Quran, and God allowed the messenger of the covenant to point that out based on the Quran's mathematical code, and and the Quran was restored back to its pristine purity after 1400 years. And we know that it says with him is the original master record. So God has the original master record of all his revelations and all the knowledge and all the information in general, right? But especially the Quran itself, right? I mean, God has the original master record. The Quran we have in our hands, is just ink and paper, right? And it doesn't matter. People can burn it, people can destroy it, whatever they want, but they can't really destroy the Quran or tamper with the Quran because God has protected the Quran. Verse 40 says, whether we show you what we promised them or terminate your life before that, your sole mission is to deliver the message. It is us who will call them to account. So the messenger's job is just to deliver God's message. That's all it is, and it's not his job to punish the people or call them to account, as God says. You do your part, and then the rest is up to God. 41, do they not see that every day on earth brings them closer to the end, and that God decides their lifespan irrevocably? He is the most efficient reckoner. Others before them have schemed, but to God belongs the ultimate scheming. He knows what everyone is doing. The disbelievers will find out who the ultimate winners are. Those who disbelieved will say, you are not a messenger. Say, God suffices as a witness between me and you, and those who possess knowledge of the scripture, right? So we understand that the messenger from God brings proof from God that he's a messenger, and those who disbelieve in the truth will say to the real messenger of God that he's not a messenger. But God bears witness, and he suffices as a witness that the messenger here, being Rashad Khalifa, is a messenger sent by God, as pointed out by the Quran's mathematical code, or any messenger for that matter. God bears witness that these are real messengers, and if they present proof, advocate the worship of God alone, and do not ask for any wage, we're supposed to follow them. And God's and we understand that there's many mathematical phenomena around these, including verse 43. I don't really have it in front of me right now, but I remember that there were some mathematical facts around verse 43 as well, where it says God suffices as a witness, and God says that other people have schemed in the past, but obviously to God belongs the ultimate scheming. There are people who try to scheme and try to subvert God's message, try to promote doubt, try to fight the message, and they scheme a lot of different schemes. But to God belongs the ultimate scheming, and in the end, all these people are committed to defeat, and all their works will be in vain. And God tells us also that these people, they can't do anything They know that they can't, overpower God in any way. For example, and he gives the example of how nobody can change the direction, the course of their life. Nobody can go in reverse and start becoming younger and younger. For example, every day brings them closer to the end. Their bodies keep on deteriorating, um, you know, and eventually, they have to meet God, and so nobody can fight that. And this is just an example of God's omnipotence. I mean, and it's just not about true about the age; it's about everything else that goes on in this world. God is the one who controls each and everything, and nobody else can do anything. And everything is being controlled by God. And so ultimately, whatever God wills happens, and God says that He grants victory to the messengers and to the believers, and the disbelievers are committed to doom. So God will now continue reading Surah 14, Ibrahim, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. ALR, a scripture that we reveal to you in order to lead the people out of darkness into the light, in accordance with the will of their Lord, to the path of the Almighty, the praiseworthy. And the footnote says, these initials remained a divinely guarded secret until the Quran's mathematical code was discovered in 1974 AD. See Appendix 1 for the significance of these initials. As we were talking earlier about the Quran's mathematical code, these initials are prefixed, the surah is prefixed with the initials ALR. And if you see the frequency of ALR, I mean, there's an intertwining relationship of all the ALR surahs that adds up to be multiples of 19. And so we are being reminded here that, all of these are, all this is the truth from God. These are God's revelations. These are not words of man or anything like that, or inspirations from Satan. This is God's scripture that God says He reveals to us in order to lead the people out of darkness into the light, to God's path, right? And so it says the path of God, the one who possesses everything in the heavens and everything on earth. Woe to the disbelievers that have incurred a terrible retribution, right? So if we truly believe that this is the path of God, the path of the one who possesses everything in the heavens and the earth, it's naturally the only choice we have is to worship God and follow what our God is telling us to do. Because if He is the one who is controlling everything, and you're not following His orders, then you're just going to set yourself up for failure. What is your priority? Verse 3. They are the ones who give priority to this life over the hereafter, repel from the way of God, and seek to make it crooked. They have gone far astray. So, as the subtitle says, what is your priority? We must ask ourselves, what is our priority? When we wake up in the morning, what is our priority? What is our goal for the day? To worship God, to schedule our day around our worship practices, our studies, our prayers, our Quran recitation, Quran studies, meditation, or is it about other things that we're thinking about, and we're not even concerned about anything or missing any of these things? So, but the people who don't believe, obviously, they're the ones who don't prioritize God. Obviously, God is not even the last thing on their list. Most of them would only think about God if they're really in a very desperate situation, like they're drowning, or an earthquake happens, or they're in a life and death situation. Many people will never think about God for years, even. And so, but for the believers, God is a priority. Every day you wake up in the morning, you tell yourself that you're here, you're created. Your purpose is to worship God. You're being tested. This is an illusion. Keep yourself focused. And make sure your priorities are in the right order in order for you to pass this test and succeed in this life and in the hereafter. The messenger's language. We did not send any messenger except to preach in the tongue of his people in order to clarify things for them, God then sends astray whomever he wills and guide whomever he wills. He is the Almighty, the Most Wise. So, talking about the messenger's language, God says that he sends the messengers to preach in the language of the people, right? And so it makes sense that we have received a message that is giving us message in the language that we understand so that we can benefit from the message. If the message comes in a different language and we don't understand, it's going to be very difficult for us to try to properly follow the message. And so when God sends messengers to communities, he sends them in the language of the people that speak the language, and so that they can get benefit from it. And God then sends astray whomever he wills, and guides whomever he wills. He is the Almighty, Most Wise. And so, based on his knowledge of every single person, God decides which person is going to accept the message and which person is just going to ridicule it and toss it out, without even looking at the proofs, and go astray. Verse 5, Moses, then we sent Moses with our miracles, saying, lead your people out of darkness into the light, and remind them of the days of God. These are lessons for every steadfast, appreciative person. So, God said he sent Moses in the past with the same message to lead the people out of darkness into the light for the same purpose, and to remind them of the days of God. And these are lessons for every steadfast, appreciative person, right? And so to remind them that, they have to worship God. And as it talks about the days of God, we understand that, Sabbath was one of the days. And then also the days of God could also signify like the hereafter or the day of judgment as well. Nevertheless, he says, these are lessons for every steadfast, appreciative person. So it is important, very important for us, in order to be happy and satisfied, to be appreciative of God. Being appreciative is something that is probably not as clear to some people as it should be. I mean, it's one of the most important things if you worship God, because God is the one who has given you everything. And so if you're not appreciative of things around you, that means that you're not following God's path. So it's very important for us, to be very careful when we utter things, to make sure that we're not being appreciative of God's blessings. So verse 6, it says the importance of being appreciative. Recall that Moses said to his people, remember God's blessings upon you. He saved you from Pharaoh's people, who inflicted the worst persecution upon you, slaughtering your sons and sparing your daughters. That was an exacting trial from your Lord. Appreciative versus unappreciative. Your Lord has decreed, the more you thank me, the more I give you. But if you turn unappreciative, then my retribution is severe. Moses said, if you disbelieve along with all the people on earth, God is in no need praiseworthy. So, these verses talk about the importance of being appreciative, and we're giving the example of Moses and his people. And God's, is talking about Moses and his people, where, Moses was reminding these people to be appreciative of God, because at some point these people turned unappreciative, even though, God had given them so many blessings and got them out of oppression and slavery, and they were still not being reverent of God, and still, committing idol worship and so many other things. And so he was telling them to remember God's blessings. He saved them from Pharaoh's people, who inflicted the worst persecution upon them, including killing their young children, slaughtering their sons and sparing their daughters. Killing their children, was an exacting trial from God. God took them out of that wicked, tyranny that they were being oppressed in, and allowed them to become victorious and they forgot about it, and that's why God tells us that the more you thank God, the more He gives you. If you thank God more, you're gonna get more. And it's true. If you don't appreciate the value of things, there's numerous examples in the Quran, right? There's example of the people of Sheba, and there's many other examples. So if you don't uh, thank God for His blessings, if you don't recognize them, any blessings, it could be people in your life, it could be things that God has given you, it could be your work, it could be your family, it could be anything, right? But whatever it is, especially the message and all the blessings that God has given us, we have to be appreciative of everything that God has given us. And the more we appreciate Him, the more He gives us. So it's in our best interest, naturally, to appreciate God. If you want to be happy, you have to appreciate God. If you truly want to show your appreciation, I mean, you have to be reverent of God, and you have to show your appreciation with actions rather than with words, and do the things that please God instead of just saying thank you, for example, right? And so we have to remember that being appreciative of God, being obedient to God, and thanking Him and reverencing Him, especially when He gives us blessings, remembering those blessings and counting those blessings is very, very important for us to live a fulfilling and wholesome life. Otherwise, people just end up being complainers and objectors and unhappy, and it shows on their faces. As God says, the believers are happy, and you recognize their marks on their faces, and we have to be appreciative of God, and it's not, if it's something that we're struggling with. I mean, we have to practice. Maybe some people like to. I've never really done that, but sometimes people come up with these exercises that today, every day they think about 4 or 5 things that they can thank God for, or things like that. But whatever works for you, just remember that you have to take time to thank God. Look at your past. Think of the struggles that you were facing in the past, and how God helped you come out of those situations, and how God protected you to these situations, and the blessings He gave you. And there could be such simple things. For example, like one thing I like is like the message of the covenant talks about. For example, you're sitting in a cozy place in your home where the temperature is not too hot or too cold, and it's cold outside or too hot, and here you are sitting in your house perfectly fine, and thank God for it. So we always have something to thank God for. I mean, God says He has given us the eyes, the ears, and the brains. I mean, if you don't have so many other things that you complain about, you could thank God for the things you have. Everybody has a brain, hopefully, and so we can all thank God for that, right? We can thank God for our eyes, ears. Many people, have so many things, and then if they don't have one thing or 2 things like that they really want, they'll dwell on those things and forget about all the blessings and turn unappreciative. So we have to remember that being a submitter, being a believer, is synonymous with being appreciative. And so if you want to get your life on track, and be good with God, you have to remember to be appreciative in your life, and whether it's people around you, or objects, or incidences, just remember them. Not Don't forget about them, and appreciate God for those things. Egotistic defiance, a human trait. Have you not heard about those before you, the people of Noah, Ad, Thamud, and others who came after them, and known only to God? Their messengers went to them with clear proofs, but they treated them with contempt, and said, "We disbelieve in what you are sent with. We are skeptical about your message, full of doubt." So we understand that the egotistic defiance is a human trait, as seen in the footnote, and all those communities in the past where God sent them the messenger and sent them the message, what the experience was, after seeing the clear proofs, after showing the clear proofs to the people, what the messengers experienced was persecution and ridicule and contempt and even violence, right? And messengers were attacked and killed. Um, and God said this is a tragic, it's a human trait. And you see that from the beginning of time to now. We understand, how people treat the messengers, and this is how humans are. Bad humans are. Following our parents blindly, a great human tragedy. Their messenger said, "Do you have doubts about God, the initiator of the heavens and the earth? He invites you only to forgive your sins and to give you another chance to redeem yourselves." They said, "You are no more than humans like us who want to repel us from the way our parents used to worship. Show us some profound authority." Their messenger said to them, "We are no more than humans like you, but God blesses whomever he chooses from among his servants. We could not possibly show you any kind of authorization except in accordance with God's will. In God the believers shall trust. Why should we not trust in God when he has guided us in our paths? We will steadfastly persevere in the face of persecution. In God all the trusters shall trust." Those who disbelieved said to their messengers, "We will banish you from our land unless you revert to our religion." Their Lord inspired them, "We will inevitably annihilate the transgressors, and we will let you dwell in their land after them. This is the reward for those who reverence my majesty and reverence my promise." They issued a challenge, and consequently every stubborn tyrant ended up doomed. Awaiting him is hell, wherein he will drink putrid water. He will gulp it down, though he cannot stand it, as death comes to him from every direction, but he will never die. Awaiting him is a terrible retribution. And the footnote says, when we rebelled against God and agreed with Satan during the great feud, the angel suggested that we should be banished to hell, Appendix 7. But the Most Merciful decided to give us another chance to redeem ourselves. He said to the angels, "I know what you do not know," 2:30. God knew that many humans would have protested that they had no idea how bad hell was. The awesome description of hell in 14:17 and 12:19 through 22 nullifies such a protest. Now we have a pretty good idea how terrible hell is, right? So following the parents, a tragic human tragedy. Every time you try to help people, if people are born Christian or Jews or Muslims or Buddhists, it's very unlikely that they will choose to follow a different religion than what their parents brought them up with. When children are young, they find out what their parents' religion is. In a lot of places, they'll even say that the children are Jewish or Buddhist or whatever, without the child even making any kind of decision. So they force the religion in some way on the children, or the children naturally just accept it as it's some kind of inheritance, right? As we can see, and they just take the religion from the parents and just follow it blindly. And that has been the system since the very beginning. It's a great human tragedy, right? Because it's a tragedy because these people will end up in hell forever, right? And if they could only use their brains and think about it, what they're following, evaluate for themselves, most of them will probably not be doing the ridiculous things that they're doing to, go to hell. And so they just want to do what their parents are doing, and if you tell them anything new, their reaction is, hostility or disbelief, right? And God says that you're just, the messengers, their response to the messengers is that they're just humans who want to, lead us away from the path of our parents, right? And yeah, if your parents are not guided, and God is giving you a better guidance than what your parents are doing, then obviously you should listen, right? Your parents, you don't listen to your parents about anything else, but when the parents tell you anything about religion, You end up following it at some for whatever reason, right? That doesn't make any sense. And so, but the messengers are saying that they are no more than humans, and but the humans demand the messengers of things that they cannot possibly have control on themselves, like bringing some kind of retribution, or bringing masses from the sky, um, or so many other kinds of things that only God, when God allows, would happen. And so they ask those things, and then the messengers say, "We cannot possibly show you any kind of authorization except in accordance with God's will." And they say, "We will steadfastly persevere in the face of your persecution." So the messengers have to steadfastly persevere every time in the face of the persecution that is followed. As we know from history, all the messengers, Noah, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Rashad, um, all these messengers suffered a lot of persecution, and they had to steadfastly persevere. They had no choice. They had to deliver God's message, do their job, and eventually the message prevailed, and God allowed those messengers to have victory, and the disbelievers lost. Um, and but the people who are hostile, I mean, they want to kill the messengers, and they want to like banish the messengers. But God says He inevitably annihilates all the transgressors, and we can see this is what happened to Pharaoh's army. They wanted the same for Moses and the followers of Moses, and then they were drowned. Same with Noah, and other people. Were also like people of Muhammad, for example. They were a lot of those people were killed in wars and stuff, and defeated, and and God says, inevitably He will grant victory to all the believers, and the disbelievers will always suffer in hell at the end. And God describes to us how terrible hell is, so people can't say on the day of judgment that they don't know how terrible hell is, right? And here, I mean, among other verses in the Quran, I mean, here's one that talks about hell, where they will drink putrid water. Now, if there is any kind of impurity in the water, like imagine, some kind of bacteria in the water, or imagine if you, left milk over, a few days, and it's going bad. I mean, how are you going to be able to drink it, And they can, so, but, it's so bad, the water, that putrid water that they'll drink, imagine some kind of acid, that will burn their insides, and they cannot stand to drink it, but they will gulp it down. They will have no other choice. They want to gulp it down, and death. It talks about death coming to them from every direction, like every direction, like imagine, for example, you have a tummy ache, right? And so you can say, okay, well, I have a tummy ache, and I'm gonna, let's say I feel like I'm gonna die, but then you have a headache, and then you have, you're burning with fire, and then your feet are, you feel like your feet are being chopped, and so like they have death, and then someone's trying to shoot them, for example, so if death coming from all directions, and it's like that's the closest, I guess, allegory of hell. Like death is coming to them from every direction. I mean, they're being burned, their skins are being restored as the skins are being burned. They're drinking water that's burning up their intestines, and they're, I mean, just so much, right? And we cannot, like, still, it is incredibly painful to even think about this kind of life that is eternal. I mean, imagine if someone had to bear that for 5 minutes. They'll probably die, right? Maybe within the first minute or two, probably, if they would really have to do. But imagine in hell, these people will be going through that continuously for eternity. But they will not die, because when you die, it puts an end to all that suffering, because your soul leaves the body, right? And they would want that, to just like maybe sleep it off, or just have some kind of like a break. They won't even get that. So this is how bad hell is, and God is letting us know, so that not just to like scare us and stuff, but but to caution us that, we have to be careful, we have to be alert, and we have to understand that what are the consequences of things that we may do in this life that we're going to end up paying in this way, and that we shouldn't be one of those people. Now, how easy it is for people to fall in this kind of a trap, right, just by committing idol worship, right? And so we have to be very careful and value God's message, value God and worship Him as He should be worshipped, so that we don't have to go through what is described here in these verses today. So with this, God willing, let's pray to God that God spares us from this kind of retribution and keeps us on the right path so we can be guided. And if you guys have any comments or questions at this point, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
MashaAllah. God bless you.
Thank you.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with the sentiment that it's very easy to take things for granted and not be appreciative. Regardless of what it is, whether it be even the English language, as yesterday it was. But it's appreciation is a big thing, and sometimes we take things for granted. So I am thankful for the fact that we have this beautiful group where we come together and we study the Quran together, and I'm thankful as well that we're a community of sorts where we look out for each other of what's best interest. So God has blessed us 100%.
Praise be to God. Yeah, mashallah, I remember there was this one article that the Messenger of the Covenant also published about being appreciative, where he said, God looked down on the people and he looked down on earth and he saw that, people were astray, and he gave them the guidance. I'm paraphrasing. Maybe if someone can find it, they can probably read it too. It's beautiful.
Was that an article? I thought it was in one of the conferences. No?
It was, but it's also published. He published
It's
it.
written down. Okay.
Yeah.
I also remember in one of the while we're looking in one of the videos, he was mentioning that being appreciative and unappreciative means being believer or disbelievers. So believers are appreciative and disbelievers are unappreciative, and that refers back to the verse somewhere in the Quran where God says, I showed them two ways. And then they're either appreciative or unappreciative. So whoever chooses the right path is appreciative of God's guidance, and whoever is unappreciative and disbelieves, whoever disbelieves and chooses the wrong path is unappreciative. And so like you and Brother Justin were saying, one of the most important things that we should be appreciative of is this message, is this Quran that God has given us. And we should be appreciative by, reading it, accepting it, submitting to it, and, making sure that we, inshallah, use it in our daily life, as like actively remembering God's words. Inshallah.
MashaAllah, that's good points. Yeah, what Sister Mona just said made me remember like the part in the Quran. I think it was, I don't know if it was during the Great Feud or I think it had something to do with Adam, but it was Satan. It said he was. There's a few places, but in one place it said he was unappreciative and a disbeliever in his Lord. And when I heard that for the first time, I'm like, wow. Because that's, I guess, that's one of his primary traits. Like, so he must have been really unappreciative from the beginning, even despite maybe all his power he had. You know.
I think what you're looking for is a better perspective 1988,
Mm-hmm.
October.
Do you want to maybe read it?
Let me just find. It's a prayer of thanks to God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, inshallah. So it's a Muslim perspective, October 1988, the first page. A prayer of thanks to God. God looked down at the planet Earth and saw that all his messages have been corrupted beyond recognition. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam no longer resembled the religions preached by Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. God looked down at the planet Earth and saw that Jews, the majority of them, do not believe his word, the Torah. They do not believe in the hereafter, nor do they know God. Lest you think that I am too hard on the Jews, let me quote a prominent Rabbi, Harold Kushner of Boston, in his book entitled When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Rabbi Kushner writes on page 29, we would be well advised to take this world as seriously as we can in case it turns out to be the only one we ever have, and to look for meaning and justice here. Are these the word of one who believes in the hereafter? On page 148, Kushner says, are you capable of forgiving and loving God, even when you have found out that He is not perfect? Astaghfirullah. Can you learn to love? Can you learn to love and forgive Him despite His limitations? Astaghfirullah. Is this a religious leader who knows God? Then it's a very long article. Then it goes on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15, 16, and 17, 18, and 19. And then at the end it says how fortunate we are. Do you want me to read all of them?
If you want.
Okay. So number 3. It says the Christians are not in much better shape. A prominent Christian leader agrees fully with Rabbi Kushner's blasphemy. And the back cover of Rabbi Kushner's book is seen an endorsement by Norman Vincent Peale, where he describes the blasphemy written book as a book all humanity needs. Number 4. Due to the Nicene distortions, today's Christianity is diametrically opposed to the teaching of Jesus. While Jesus ordered his followers to worship God, my Lord and your Lord, John 20:17, the Christians have been tricked into worshiping Jesus instead. If Jesus were to be resurrected today, he would surely disown those who call themselves Christians. In fact, he is reported in Matthew 7:23 as disowning those who call him Lord. Number 5. The Muslims of today have also strayed from God's path. Despite receiving the final testament, which is perfectly intact, preserved, fully detailed, and made easy to understand, the Muslims of today have disregarded the Quran and followed their traditions, superstitions, and the human-made teachings of scholars. God saw the Muslims testify to a false creed. Although the Quran 3:18 dictates the creed, there is no God besides the one God. The Muslims no longer want God if Muhammad is not with him. The proof: just visit any mosque or Islamic center and declare 8. And he saw that they practiced zakat charity the wrong way, not in accordance with his word, the Quran 6:141. Number 9. God saw that every practice of worship that came to us through Abraham and Muhammad was severely corrupted. Number 10. God saw that his final message to the world, the Quran, has been tampered with. 2 human-made sentences in praise of Prophet Muhammad, 928 and 129, were added to the last surah revealed in Medina. 11. And God willed that. We know that this world would end in 2280 AD or 1710 AH. 12. And God decided that the human race is now ready to understand the purpose of our lives, why we are here. MP November 88, the Muslim Perspective November 88. Number 13. And God willed that we know how the Quran was sent down and how it was recorded, that Muhammad received it in a Masjid al-Aqsa, located in the highest heaven, that it was released to him by Gabriel over a period of 23 years, and that it was written down by Muhammad's own hand. Number 14. And God, most gracious, most merciful, wanted us to know that he has given us 40 long years, 46:15, to look around us, reflect, study, investigate, then make a decision to rejoin his kingdom or stay in Satan's chaotic domain. Anyone who dies before the age of 40 goes to heaven. Number 15. And God willed that the time has come to reveal his great miracle in the Quran, a living, perpetual, ever-growing, ever-present, tangible, physical, and utterly overwhelming miracle. Number 16. And God knew that most of those who do believe in him do not know him. They do not believe that he is doing everything, that he is omnipotent. Number 17. And God willed that we know the secret of perfect happiness, perfect health, wealth, joy, and peace of mind, now and forever. Number 18. And to fulfill all these divine decrees, God sent his messenger to our generation, 381. Number 19. How fortunate we are to be born at this time and to be the recipients of these awesome blessings from God. How fortunate we are. Thank you, God. MashaAllah.
So, thank you for reading.
A great article.
Thank you for reading that, sister.
Pleasure. Thank God. Like I said, it's in Muslim Perspective, October 1988, if anyone wants to read it.
A question kind of led by Brother Suleman during the verses, how this isn't a religion of compulsion, and you know how do we strive? Like I'm a parent, and I strive to teach them with an open mind and for them to use their logic and brains, but also, they join me in prayer and all that fun stuff. Because obviously I want the best for them, and like I feel blessed that God has guided me to the truth. However, I don't want it to be compulsive. How would we go about doing that? Any suggestions?
Mashallah, that's a very good question. Mashallah, that's a very good question. If no one else has a response, I would like to respond to that. So, I mean, obviously, we're not supposed to impose our religion on our children in the sense that, if it comes down to the point that a child says that he doesn't want to follow God's message, then, we're not gonna like beat them up or anything like that, but, God says you enjoin your children to observe the contact prayer, salat. And so, we encourage them just as we enjoin them for everything else. We enjoin them. We're not supposed to touch them with harm or anything like that. But we advise them strongly, and the messenger talks about it, says as long as you do your job, and you are persistent in advising them, the children will follow. Now, obviously, this does not mean that you're forcing the kids, right? I mean, you're telling them that God exists and this is the religion and this is the Quran, and then, they'll follow, But eventually, at the end, or like all along, it's the children's choice. If they decide to become disbelievers, there's nothing you can do about it, right? But the thing is, the main point of all of this is that, people should, even when it comes to submission, and we should encourage the children to encourage them to think with their own minds as well, that not to blindly accept anything that they hear from anybody. And so we can present to them the evidence and the proof and show them, just like we invite anybody else, but with your children, obviously, your children, we understand this is a responsibility, so to instill good habits in them. So you do that, you give them incentives and stuff, and you encourage them to be righteous, and they'll follow, God willing,
God willing. It is. I know it could be a test that God puts in my life, but I pray that they follow in submission and even teach me at some point as a father. Right. It's always good to have people who hold you accountable around you. Right. Not anything more than that. I hope I don't want to understate that, especially with the crazy chat going on here in the background. Yeah, no, that's wise words, and God willing, I will be a good example for them to follow the religion, and hopefully, God willing, we can be submitted together, right?
Yeah, of course. And you should try to like get them involved and have Quran studies with them, and obviously at their level where they can engage and understand the material, the content. At their level, you should have Quran studies with them and teach them the religion. And especially it's the mother's job more than the father, in the sense that mother spends the most time with them, but nevertheless, both of them. But it's very important that from as early age as possible, like you start teaching them the religion. But obviously, there's no.
Yeah.
You can't force them. For example, you can't say like, if you don't do your prayers, you're not gonna get any food. I'm not gonna feed you.
Yeah, God willing, I would never be that forceful. No, and you know what? There is a blessing. Like my children, they do join in prayers, and occasionally they listen to a Quran study. I say, hey, you want to come? And they're at that age where not a lot of they get bored pretty quickly. But there's points where I'm proud of what they accomplished, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm not being compulsive because what they say about good intentions, right? So
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
the messenger of the covenant, we see a good example too, where he was inviting his children, his family to join the Quran studies, and also I would definitely encourage you with your kids, like have put like a day or a time of the day, where you study some verses of the Quran with them and explain it to them, and at their level, it's very important that you teach them the religion, Um, so, I mean, you can't expect them, for example, just to know when they get to that level. But obviously, also having them in the adult studies, I think, is good. Even if they're doing their work, like playing or anything, they're still listening. You think they're not, but they're picking up, things that they're hearing, eventually. So, yeah, I mean, we have to get them involved for them if we want that outcome for them. You get them involved from an early age into educating them about the religion, because especially more than any other time, and it's important, right? Like you see how the world and Satan, how they try to indoctrinate different things into their minds. And so unless we equip them with the right information and education on the difference between good and bad and right and wrong, I mean, they're going to grow up like every other child, and think that it's okay to, for example, have boyfriend and girlfriend, or have different genders and whatnot, and all those things that Satan wants them to uh, um, follow.
speaking on that, the older I get, the more you notice. Yeah, I read the verse last night. The idols only bring pain upon you, and you see that around you. All these people believing in different things that they think can help them, but truly, it decimates their lives and makes it horrible. Thank God we have been guided to the Quran and praising Him alone. Like what a blessing. Truly, because we are the minority. If you think like we're the minority of minorities, so what a true blessing. You know, God's great. This lost guy in the context here.
Hmm?
Yeah, this guy he needs to go.
Yeah, I am in the process of doing that actually, as we speak.
Okay.
I think he's smoking something.
Maybe we've asked this
All right.
question
Anyone else
before,
with any
but
other comments or questions?
yeah, I have a question. In verse 5, chapter 14, where God says, "Lead your people out of darkness into the light and remind them of the days of God." Hmm, what do we mean by days of God?
Sister Mona, I want to apologize. This guy in the chat has captivated me for a second, and I didn't even hear your question. Can you repeat? God willing, I'll pay attention to what's true, and that's this Quran study right here. My apologies, sister.
Which chat are you talking
All right.
about?
So I
Is
guess
it in
if there are no
what
other
the?
comments or
This
questions,
is it's in chat. Like
Whoa.
what Masood said, is a satanic creature.
Brilliant has thousands of interactive lessons in math, science.
sorry.
Sorry, I had a question. I'm repeating it because Brother Justin asked. I don't know if you heard it, Solomon, or not. It's verse 5, chapter 14, where God says, "Lead your people out of darkness into the light and remind them at days of God." What does days of God mean here?
Wouldn't that refer to the Day of Judgment?
Ah, you mean the day of judgment.
I could be wrong, and God willing, if anybody, maybe the days leading up to the Day of Judgment, because we only have a short interim for this test. So, the days that we've been given are a blessing. Don't waste them, because the day of retribution is coming. So, be prepared, right? Maybe I'm wrong. God willing, if somebody else has a better answer.
No, I think I believe you're right. You're absolutely right. Thank you. Thank you.
What surah which ayah did we end up on here for the last one?
We ended on verse 17 from Surah 14.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
Oh, no more question or comment from my side. Thank you.
All right. So, are there any other comments from anyone? Any comments, questions? All right. So, thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. God bless you all.